Hello, and this is the No Face Movement. In this video, movie, little series that we put together, research hard, me and Mystique, is only going to be up on YouTube for a limited time only before we pull it down. But the truth must be exposed. Alright, the titles that people use for the Heavenly Father, we don't believe in those titles. We suggest for you to go and find and get to know the Heavenly Father as He really truly exists. There's a lot of stuff that you're about to see as the time is ticking down. I want everyone out there to be righteous. I want you people to go out there, help the earth out, help trees, help grow. I want you people to go out there and become more communal. Help your neighbors, help the needy. If you do have money, help the person that is needy. If you have extra rooms and you're using it for storage, the Heavenly Father's Son came and taught us the kingdom of grace is by your rewards. If you have enemies, make friends. We're all brothers and sisters here, folks. Alright? Don't be consumed by what you see on TV. Don't be consumed by the music that you hear that rattle your spirit. Don't be consumed and accept the mark of the beast. There's a lot of stuff going on, and the time is now. And we're about to hit some rough patches here, folks. All you must do to reach grace is find and get to know the Heavenly Father as He truly exists on this plane. Alright, folks, that is your main and number one goal. It's not to get more money. It's not to buy more wealth. It's not to get power. All your test was to do on earth is find and get to know the Heavenly Father as He truly exists. Armageddon is upon us. Armageddon, I gotta repeat this, is upon us. It's time to unite as one of righteousness, one of hope. Have faith. Fear is a disease. Don't show no fear when death happens. People that show fear is hiding from something. I want everyone out there to be righteousness. Help your neighbors out. But as the time goes, you're about to see, we're about to expose a lot of stuff in this little video. This is the No Face Movement, moving the movement. Till next time, facing off. Please be prepared. Have bug out kits. Like I said, become more communion. Don't see what you see on TV, on History Channel, when something happens that everyone has to go out there and kill. This is wrong. This is wrong. People did it without technology before. And when technology falls, well, we gotta go back to the old systems. Alright, folks? That's the only way we're gonna receive peace. Computers, machines don't have feelings. Alright? Peace and be easy.
Judgment. And if they say no, God can't say yes. So who's mightier, they or God? They are. Is this blasphemy, yes or no? This is blasphemy of the highest order. Cardinal Bellarmine says, all names which in Scripture are applied to Christ, by virtue of which it is established that He is over the church, all the same names are applied to the Pope. That means he assumes the place of God. So he qualifies on that count. Given in Rome from our palace, the 10th of February, 1817, the 15th jurisdiction of the Most Holy Pontiff and Father in Christ, and our Lord, our God, the Pope Leo XII. So the Pope had himself crowned as God. We hold upon this earth the place of God Almighty, the great ecclesiastical letters of Pope Leo. Did you know that when the papacy today writes an encyclical, it always signs the encyclical, Pope John Paul II, in other words, does this, given by us, capital letter, in our, capital letter, pontificates. Interesting. Because God says, let us make man in our image, capitals. So the papacy takes the prerogative, and to this day By their writing, they claim to have and be the power of God. So, Rome qualifies. The Most High Council. We define that the Holy Apostolic See and the Roman Pontiff hold the primacy over the whole world. Now, this power would eventually take control of the whole world. Does Rome really control the world? That's ludicrous. Do you really believe that? Think it's possible? Well, we're going to have a lecture tomorrow on secret societies. I wouldn't miss it if I were you. Thomas Aquinas wrote, secular power, this is the great Catholic philosopher that is quoted by John Paul II more than any other philosopher of the Roman Catholic Church. He writes, secular power is subject to the spiritual power, as the body is subject to the soul. And therefore it is not a usurpation of authority if the spiritual prelate interfere in temporal things concerning those matters in which the secular power is subject to him. So everybody is subject to Rome. The Council of Trent declared all temporal power is his. The dominion, the jurisdiction, and the government of the whole earth is his by divine right. All rulers of the earth are his subject and must submit to him. That was the Council of Trent. That's the one that ended the attack of the Reformation. Here we have a lady who said, Jesus said, I am the good shepherd, and this lady said, it's like being with God, when she saw John Paul II. Did she wear out the saints? It was given him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. Well, again, Thomas Aquinas said that convicted heretics should be put to death just as surely as other criminals. The Catholic Church is a respecter of conscience and of liberty. Nevertheless, when confronted with heresy, she has recourse to force, to corporal punishment, to torture. She lit in Italy the funeral piles of the Inquisition. Catholic professor Alfred Budrat, the Catholic Church, Renaissance Protestantism. Yes, she admits it. Here is the Chiesa del Gesù, which is the seat of the Jesuits. Here is the Jesuit oath that is made, which basically says that they can get rid of any heretical king in the entire world, any commonwealth of governments that does not want to subject itself to the papacy, and anybody who does not submit to the authority of the Roman Pontiff can be safely destroyed. So the church ruled as the woman ruling over kings. That is how she depicted herself throughout history. The Inquisition, well, the Inquisition tells us that she wore out the saints, the Tower of London, the Hague in the Netherlands. What is the definition of heresy? Greek, heresis, choice. Deciding for oneself what one shall believe and practice. That's heresy. So who must decide for you? Rome must decide for you what you must believe. And if you do not fall in line with this, well, then you must be eliminated. You must be eradicated. Well, we are heading for some thunderous times in the world that we live in today. These are some of the instruments of torture that they used. These were terrible things. These tongs over here were opened up and they could close like two little buckets, making a little ball. They would put hot coals in there and then sort you out that way. They would put these shackles around you. These were put around the feet. Notice the pins on the inside. They would go right into the bone. They were so wicked. This one over here went around the neck, and then they would tighten the screw, and of course it would push right here into your Adam's apple. And in fact, General Franco, in the 1970s in Spain, still used that instrument of torture. Can you believe that? How primitive can you get? And the stocks, and the thumb screws, and this terrible thing over here, where they would hoist you upside down with your hands behind your back and lift you up this way, high above, and hang you from a ceiling, and then they'd attach this ball on a high shelf, this heavy stone, to your feet, roll it down, and rip your arms right out. That was pretty mean, the way they did. These are representations of the pyres, the stakes of the Inquisition, and they killed literally millions and millions of people. This is the famous Huguenot monument in Africa, where the French Huguenots escaped, and after the great massacre, where the Huguenots were massacred, Bartholomew Massacre, and they depicted themselves as a woman in the church escaping with a Bible in her hand and the chains of Rome torn loose. Well, I have news for you. This woman is once again chained, and every other woman on the planet, talking of churches, is once again chained. Changes times and laws. Think to change times and laws. Daniel 7:25. Does the Pope claim that he changed God's law? Absolutely. Decretal, de translat, episcop. The Pope has power to change times, to abrogate laws, and to dispense with all things, even the precepts of Christ. That's arrogance of the highest order. So they say that they can change these things. Did the papacy change the times? Certainly did. What calendar are we keeping in the world today? Who knows? We're keeping the Gregorian calendar. Who was Gregory? He was a pope. And were the times changed? Yes. On the authority of whom? Of the Jesuit astronomers. What did they change? They changed Easter. They brought the Easter feasts to bring them in line with the feast of Ishtar. They even called it that. Easter, Ishtar. Easter feast. And so, whereas the Pasch was celebrated according to the new moon, and the Passover could take place on any day of the week depending on when the new moon was sighted, so the papacy changed it and followed the symbolism of the Sadducees, who were trained in Alexandria in occult teaching, and moved it in line with the feast of Ishtar. And now Easter falls only on a Sunday and never coincides with the Passover. It is possible with the calendar that they have that at some stage in history it can actually coincide with the Passover. And what does the papacy then decree? If there happens to be a lining up of the Passover with the feast of Ishtar, then the papacy shifts Easter 1 week, so that it'll still fall on the Sunday. So she changed the times and the feasts, definitely. Also, since these times, we are celebrating the day from midnight to midnight and not from sunset to sunset. And then did she abrogate the laws and dispense with the things and the precepts of Christ? The Pope can modify divine law, prompta bibliotheca. Who gives you the right, Mr. Pope, to change the law of God? The Ten Commandments, as originally given by God on the first tablet, you shall have no other gods before me. Then there is this big commandment that you shall not bow down to idols.
To believe something supernatural happened here, it defies logic and explanation.
Doesn't make sense. The point is to make us despair, see ourselves as animal and ugly, to reject the possibility that God could love us.
The original story of Lucifer is this. Lucifer indeed was an angel at one point. But he decided he wanted to praise himself, and with that, God cast him out of heaven. He took a third of the host of heaven with him, and those are your demons. And then what you have basically is the setup of the entire Bible, the soul of man being fought over.
Just as there is a hierarchy of angels, so too is the realm of evil.
Behind every wall, every window. Heaven and hell. The world behind the world. Now, the interesting thing about skeptics, atheists, is that we're always looking for proof, certainty. The question is, what on earth would we do if we found it?
Look, your daughter doesn't say she's a demon. She says she's the devil himself.
God likes to watch. He's a sadist! I'm here on the ground with my nose in it since the whole thing began.
So, I'll bring you pain. I'll bring you horror. So that you may rise above it. So that those of you who survive this reign of hell on earth will be worthy of God's love.
What are you? Oh, so many names.
From him. After the fall comes the rise.
In a possible sign from above, lightning has struck the Vatican just hours after Pope Benedict XVI announced his surprising resignation. Footage shot shows the top of St. Peter's Basilica being struck by lightning during a thunderstorm over the Vatican. The resignation has caused a stir around the world, and now it seems that nature itself has something to say about it. Pope Benedict XVI is the first pope to resign in over 700 years. He said the reason for the resignation is that he no longer had the mental or physical strength to do the job. Now the world is left waiting and wondering who his successor will be. Sally Turner for IB Times.
Storm coming.
You sound like you're looking forward to it.
I'm adaptable.
What are you?
I'm Gotham's reckoning.
Did they kill him?
I'm not sure.
Why didn't you just kill me? Your punishment must be more severe.
Do you think he's coming back?
I don't know. Why would you run, eh?
You should be as afraid of him as I am.
I won't bury you. I've buried enough members of the Wayne family.
You don't owe these people anymore. You've given them everything.
Not everything. Not yet.
This is a sound clip of a gray alien directly after what we call a transmutation. This is where it shifted into a sound frequency. I'm going to play this for you, and it's important to understand that these beings, they can exist inside of you in the form of thought forms, in the form of negative thought forms, and they reproduce themselves via language and your things you say throughout the day. And I know that's very difficult for some of you to grasp. It's one of the most difficult things for me to understand. We've been so conditioned to think that aliens are green creatures that come down in ships and start blasting us, but the reality is far more sinister and horrifying than that. These beings exist within our very language, our very thoughts, our very thought patterns. I will leave you now, and I'll end this video following you to the sound of a gray alien directly after transmutation.
Barry, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. It really is my pleasure.
I understand you have a wealth of experience with microwaves. Can you begin by explaining to us how you began your career in microwave technology?
Yes, of course. In 1960, I was in the Royal Navy, and I worked partly with the underwater bomb disposal unit, partly with microwave warfare, and some of the other times with radar. Microwaves were involved in all of those three different areas. So, whilst I was in the Royal Navy, I trained in all aspects of microwave technology. And as anybody will tell you that's been in the forces, the training you receive is second to none. You practice it, you talk about it all day, you sleep it. So since 1960, I have been involved in all aspects of microwave technology. After that, a part of my job, because I had microwave expertise, was to question captured spies during the Cold War, when Russia and America were within seconds of global nuclear war. And microwaves by then were really sophisticated stealth weapons. And a part of my job was to find out from any spies who had been captured what the current knowledge was in that part of the world.
Oh, this technology is truly frightening. Really frightening.
Well, this is why it's microwave weapons were introduced from the 1950s, 60s, 70s to the present day. And this is another level of proof. They are so effective, if you're not in a hurry to get rid of somebody, they are so effective as a stealth weapon to beam somebody, and this has been done many times and it's recorded. You can beam people you don't like as a government to give them cancer, breast cancers, neurological illnesses. You can choose what you want them to get.
You can choose?
Oh, you can choose. You can choose which pulse frequency you want to affect the brain with. You can choose the level of microwave irradiation and the speed that you want them to become ill. It really is a perfect stealth weapon, and all you need to do is rent a house opposite someone you want to get rid of, or a group of people you want to get rid of, and just beam them. The most famous case during the Cold War was the Moscow embassy siege, where in Moscow they beamed the entire American embassy and gave them cancer.
Did they cause cancers in all the staff, or in a lot of the staff? Or?
Most of the staff, most of the children got leukemia, the women developed breast cancer, the gentlemen developed cancers. I think after about 18 months the entire staff was changed, and then the following 18 months the entire staff was changed again. And by that time people realised what was going on, and they found that they were being irradiated by microwaves. And rather than say, oh, isn't this disgusting, what have we sunk to, they thought, isn't this wonderful, let's develop this for ourselves. And governments today are still perfecting microwave warfare.
Still to this day they're working on the weaponry? Still
to this day, 2010, they are still perfecting the pulse frequencies. It's got very, very sophisticated. The pulse frequencies, how long they can transmit, whether it can be one country to another, bouncing the microwaves off the ionosphere, so you don't even have to be in the same country.
Bouncing the microwaves off the ionosphere, a lot of people won't have heard of this technology. You're talking about the HARP.
If you have a super transmitter, the microwaves, if you beam them, it's only a simple basic trigonometry.
Yeah.
But let's say I want to bring economic ruin to a country that grows all of the world's wheat.
Right.
Okay? All I have to do is beam microwaves up to the ionosphere, which is like an invisible cloud around the planet, an ion cloud around the planet. The microwaves going up at a set angle will reflect off down onto this country. And if I continuously beam the wheat in this field, or the cattle, or the sheep, I can reduce the immune system of the plants so that they won't be healthy and they will die, and I can stunt their growth, and I can bring economic ruin to that country. I can harm all of the animals, the cows, the sheep. It's so easy to do. You only have to push a button, and you can bring economic ruin to a country.
Which countries have this technology already available? Is it all the countries in the world, or just a couple of them?
It may not be a wise thing to say on a live broadcast, but you can take my word for it that I know at least 2 super transmitters in the world that have this capability, and there are probably more in areas that I do not have access to and I cannot go to. But I know there are at least 2.
I need to just go back a little bit.
Of course, yeah.
Back to your early days in the military.
Mm-hmm.
This technology was used by the British government?
Oh, okay,
Sorry,
I can see where you're going.
It was
right,
used
okay.
by the British
yeah.
government against terrorists?
We have 8,300 papers. I have knowledge of 2,300 myself. And what the governments found was that you could induce, by changing the pulse frequency, like Morse code, of the microwaves going into the brain and interfering with the brain. By specializing on the pulse frequency, you could induce psychiatric illnesses to the point where a psychiatrist could not tell if it is a genuine psychiatric illness or an induced psychiatric illness. So what you can do, theoretically, is you can target an individual's brain. They may have auditory hallucinations where they hear things, which is actually quite common with microwaves, or show signs of schizophrenia. For instance, 6.6 pulses a second can induce severe sexual aggression in men. So you could induce somebody to commit a really horrific sexual rape. So technically what you could do is have somebody committed to a psychiatric hospital or a jail for a crime just by somebody saying that they had a psychiatric problem whereby they didn't. Yep. There is that. You can target other parts of people's bodies. You can target the heart and cause heart seizures. You can target the lungs and cause bleeding. You can target, if you're clever enough, some of the essential glands in the body that control all of the hormonal systems. So if you have dissidents or people that you don't like as a government, it's very, very easy these days to irradiate them and either have them wind up in jail or in a psychiatric hospital. And of course, there is no come on you.
Yeah. Now, these weapons that the governments have and are still using, are they more powerful than, for example, the Wi-Fi I might have in my front room, or my cordless phone, or a mobile phone transmitter?
No, in fact, they're actually, the power is slightly less.
Less?
The power is slightly less. The difference is, where you might use Wi-Fi, you might go in after work and do a couple of hours and then leave. And the Wi-Fi is going out in all directions. Here, they are targeting you probably with a beam. And it is on you all day. It can follow you everywhere you go, and it can target you when you're asleep as well. So you're really getting a concentrated dose. It's a bit like putting the light on in your house and sitting with a light, or have somebody follow you with a searchlight and beaming the searchlight on you all the time. So there is a difference between that. But in fact, the power can be less. It just takes longer. One specific paper from the government that lists all of the illnesses that you can get from microwave sickness, including severe neurological disorders. We have a government document that actually says this needs to be kept secret from the Western governments because it will affect the efficiency of the military, the weapons industry, and it will also affect industrial profit.
We have the government telling us that
This
technology is dangerous?
is the United States Defense Intelligence Agency advising the Western governments to keep this secret so that they can protect industrial profit and military functions.
Kind of startling, really, isn't it?
It is so horrific that if it wasn't real, if somebody wrote a book on this, I would say this is so stupid, you could never make up a story like this. And it all goes back. It goes back to the 50s, the 60s and the 70s, when microwaves were found to be such a perfect weapon and so dangerous to the military that the United States Defense Intelligence Agency told the Western governments to keep this quiet. And they did. And this is why we have this. We have documents that show that governments pay people to experiment on people against their wishes but not against their wishes, without even telling them. So, and we have all this information going back to 1976. Everything was known by 1976. Everything. We needed no more proof, no more research, nothing was needed. And we have the, drawn up in this country, the Nuremberg Treaty. And the Nuremberg Treaty was signed by all of the nations of the world. And it is a very specific treaty. And what it says is that no human being will be experimented upon without his or her consent. And before they give consent, they have the legal right to understand all of the implications, the health problems, the future health problems, and they have the legal capacity to say no. And where this is relevant here is that there is only one exception with the Nuremberg Treaty, and that is a doctor such as yourself may experiment on his or herself only. That is the only exception. It is section 5. So no human being is allowed to be experimented upon.
Xbox, go big.
Do you remember your name? What month it is, what year?
Amazing grace.
All we have to do is accept his love and let him in your heart.
How sweet the sound.
We're gonna make you better. I promise.
That saved a wretch like me. I once was lost.
You can't run from him. He has great plans for you.
But now am was blind.
A piece of him is still inside you.
But now
You will summon him.
I
It's here.
Are you certain?
It's right there.
amazing grace.
All we have to do is accept his love and let him in your heart.
How sweet the sound.
We're gonna make promise.
that save a wretch like me. I once was lost,
You can't run from him. He has great plans for you.
but now am found. Was blind,
A piece of him is still inside you.
but now
We will summon him.
I see.
It's here.
Are you certain?
It's right there.
Alright, let's get into this. And we're getting into the Nazis and secret society. And people are probably asking, oh, what does the Nazis got to do about the last Pope? Well, the Nazis is the modern day Illuminati. You gotta remember, the Illuminati started off as the Bavarian Illuminati, which is in Bavaria. And we're going to show you and link it together. During World War II, alright, Rome, Italy, and Germany were allies. Who backed up Germany during World War II? The Catholic Church, who helped a lot of these Nazi scientists and top soldiers get out the countries and go worldwide to control NASA and other sets of governments and top spy agencies were the Catholic Church, the Vatican. They're in power. Everything that we receive today, they control. All right. Even certain people think Barack Obama is the Antichrist. No, he's not the Antichrist. He's one of the 10 kings, but he's not the Antichrist. They use him so people will get off the path of who's really in charge, folks. Alright? As we move along, we're going to get deep in this, folks. Alright? Real deep. You got to remember who controls the world. Alright? The people that control the money of the world are the Rothschild. Alright? And the Queen. They're both from German blood. The Rothschild are supposed to be Jews, but they're the new Jews, the Zionists, the Aryan Jews, with blonde hair, blue eyes. Alright? Germany still controls the European money. Alright? For the euro. Italy, the Vatican, is the world's richest and smallest country that controls everything. Let's get into this.
Thule Society. The Thule Society, originally the Student Group for Germanics, Altertum, Germanic Antiquity, was a German occultist and Völkisch group in Munich, named after a mythical northern country from Greek legend. The society is notably chiefly as the organization that sponsored the Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, which was later reorganized by Adolf Hitler into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party. According to Hitler biographer Ian Kershaw, the organization's membership list reads like a who's who of early Nazi sympathizers and leading figures in Munich, including Rudolf Hess, Alfred Rosenberg, Hans Frank, Julius Lehmann, Gottfried Fieder, Dietrich Eckart, and Karl Harrer. However, Nicholas Goodrich Clark, an expert on the Thule Society, finds that while Hans Frank and Rudolf Hess had been Thule members, other leading Nazis had only been guests of the Thule or entirely unconnected with it. There is no evidence that Hitler ever attended the Thule Society.
And this Nazi secret societies and everything, from Freemasonry. We're about to show you everything. Alright? Let's move on to the
Origins. The Thule Society was originally a German study group headed by Walter Neuhaus, a wounded World War I veteran turned art student from Berlin, who had become a keeper of pedigrees for the Germanic Order, or Order of Teutons, very important, a secret society founded in 1911 and formally named in the following year. In 1917, Neuhaus moved to Munich. His Thule Gesellschaft was to be a cover name for the Munich branch of the German Orden, but events developed differently as a result of a schism in the order. In 1918, Neuhaus was contacted in Munich by Rudolf von Sebendorf, very important figure, remember that name, an occultist and newly elected head of the Bavarian, which is historically referenced as the beginning of our modern-day Illuminati, province of the schismatic offshoot known as the German Norden, while Vetter of the Holy Grail. The two men became associates in a recruitment campaign, and Sebadendorf adopted Neuhaus' Dual Society as a cover name for his Munich lodge of the German Norden, while Vetter at its formal dedication on August 18, 1918.
Alright, their primary beliefs is that the Aryan race are the people. They're racist. You ready to get it? They're blonde hair, blue eyes. Alright, folks. It's very important. Alright. Well, we're not getting into the beliefs. The links are gonna be at the bottom, and we're gonna find out where does Thulio come from. Remember what Mystique said, who was very important. So the Germain Orden. Alright. And the very important guy, it's hard for me to pronounce. I ain't German, so his name is
Rudolf von Sebadendorf.
Alright, start this thing. Let's read into it.
Germana Norden. Although Liszt has been concerned to awaken German nationalist consciousness, the High Armenian Order had addressed itself to the upper and middle class Germans in Austria, and here Liszt had preferred the role of a mystagogue over political activism. Liszt's disciples, however, became active in the Reichsschimmerbund and the German Norden, two historically significant, virulently anti-Semitic groups in Germany. Both groups were organized by the political activist Theodor Fichte, a major figure in German anti-Semitism. Fichte, born 1852, was the son of Saxon peasants, and he was concerned about the small tradesmen and craftsmen and their threat from what he perceived to be the large Jewish industry. The Liszt-inspired German Norden, which is Germanic or Teutonic order, not to be confused with the medieval German order of the Teutonic Knights, very, very important, was a Völkisch secret society in early 20th century Germany. It was founded in Berlin in 1912 by Theodor Fichte and several prominent German occultists, including Philip Stoff, who held office in the Liszt Society, and High Armenian Orden, as well as Hermann Pohl, who became the German Norden's first leader. The group was a clandestine movement aimed at the upper echelons of society and was a sister movement to the more mainstream Reichsschimmerbund. The order, whose symbol was a swastika, had a hierarchical fraternal structure similar to Freemasonry. Very important. Local groups.
See, they're just like the Freemasonry.
Local groups of the sect met to celebrate the summer solstice, an important neo-pagan festivity in Völkisch circles, and later in Nazi Germany, and more regularly to read the edicts as well as some of the German mystics. In addition to occult and magical philosophies, it taught to its initiates nationalist ideologies of Nordic racial superiority and anti-Semitism, then rising throughout the Western world, as was becoming increasingly typical of it, required its candidates to prove that they had no non-Aryan bloodlines, and required from each a promise to maintain purity of his stock in marriage. In 1916, during World War I, the German Norden split into two parts. Eberhard von Brockhausen became the Grand Master of the Loyalist German Norden. Pohl, previously the order's chancellor, founded a schismatic offshoot, the German Norden, while Vetter of the Holy Grail. He was joined in the same year by Rudolf von Sebadendorf, formerly Rudolf Glauer, easier to say too, a wealthy adventurer with wide-ranging occult and mystical interests. A Freemason and a practitioner of Sufism and astrology, Sebadendorf was also an admirer of Guido von List and Lanz von Liebenfels. Convinced that the Islamic and Germanic mystical systems shared a common Aryan root, he was attracted by Poe's runic lore and became the master of the Wahlvertes Bavarian province, very, very important, late in 1917. Charged with reviving the province's fortunes, Sebottendorf increased membership from about 100 in 1917 to 1,500 by the autumn of the following year.
The Bavarian Illuminati changed their name. But let's get deeper in this. Alright. So they're an order, the Teutonic Knights. Alright. They inspired the German order. Alright. Well, let's get to them. They say don't confuse the Teutonic order with the Teutonic Knights, but they're the same. We're about to show you. So here we go. This is very important.
The Order of Brothers of the German House of Saint Mary in Jerusalem is a German medieval military order, and in modern times a purely religious Catholic order, the Catholic order is who supported those Nazis.
They're like the Knights Templars.
It was formed to aid Christians on their pilgrimages to the Holy Land and to establish hospitals. Its members have commonly been known as the Teutonic Knights, since they also served as a crusading military order in the Middle Ages. The military membership was always small, with volunteers and mercenaries augmenting the force as needed. After the Reformation, the bailiwick of the order became Protestant. This branch still consists of knights, but the modern Roman Catholic order consists of Roman Catholic priests, nuns, and associates.
So Roman Catholic priests, nuns, and associates. This goes all the way back to the Holy Roman Empire. Alright, folks. This is the Knights Templar. Alright, this is the real Knights Templar, not the ones where you Google up. This is facts right here. So we move down. I want you guys to remember this city. The headquarters right now, 1809 till present, Vienna. Remember that. The Teutonic Knight is a German order. Alright? It's part of the Illuminati. Alright, folks? They got Grandmasters. Alright? The first one was Heinrich Walpott von Bandshammen, and the current Grandmaster is Bruno Plata. Alright? And he's in Vienna right now, folks. It's a white mantle with a black cross. It's very important. The rest you can't really see, but let's get into it. This is a very important cross. It's gold and black. Remember the colors? And the German bird in the middle. Alright, folks. Let's get to the Illuminati. The Illuminati, both real and fictitious historical name, refers to the Bavarian Illuminati, an Enlightenment era secret society found on May 1st, 1776. In more modern context, the name refers to a purport conspiratorial organization which is alleged to mastermind events and control the world affairs through governments and corporations to establish a new world order. In this context, the Illuminati usually represent as a modern version or continuing of the Bavarian Illuminati. And remember, the Bavarian Illuminati, where did they start off? In Germany as the Templars, the Teutonic Knights. Alright, folks, let's move on. This is very important. And this is where we get into the last
death. The Catholic Church, that once rejected evolutionary thinking, seems to have been among those who bowed to its hypothesis, largely due to the influence of Teilhard, who had become a hero and role model for a whole generation of younger priests and theologians. He set the stage for the renewal movements, which finally came to flower in the era of Vatican II. Vatican II is the Catholic document that launched the ecumenical movement for the purpose of ultimately unifying mankind in a universal faith. Evolution plays a key role in ecumenism since the pagan religions of the world are largely based on its precepts. Under Pope John Paul II, Rome now considers evolution to be a part of the gospel truth. It is reported that the Pope has put the teaching authority of the Roman Catholic Church firmly behind the view that the human body is the product of a gradual process of evolution. But the influence of this Jesuit priest would reach far beyond the walls of Rome. In 1985, author Marilyn Ferguson published her controversial book, The Aquarian Conspiracy, which USA Today called the Handbook of the New Age. In it, Ferguson describes a worldwide conspiracy of people seeking to bring about a paradigm shift in global consciousness. In the Los Angeles Times, Marilyn Ferguson revealed that Teilhard was the name most frequently mentioned by 185 leaders in the New Age movement when Ferguson asked who was the most influential person in their lives. By the end of the 20th century, Teilhard du Chardin would be known by many as the father of the New Age. Teilhard died in 1955, but his passing only marked the beginning of his meteoric rise to fame. His treatises, long suppressed, were published and quickly translated into all major languages. Harvard's Widener Library now houses an entire tier of books devoted to Teilhard's writing and thinking. Today, more and more people, Christians as well as non-Christians, accept his views and take keen interest in studying his philosophy. He has become known for his theory that man is evolving mentally and socially toward a final spiritual unity. Andrew Jackson Davis, known by some as the prophet of the New Revelation, channeled a message from the spirit realm that called for the paleontological sciences to direct man's perception of God through the study of nature. Is it merely coincidence that Teilhard du Chardin, a priest and paleontologist, would lead the way into the dawn of a new age? Researcher Charles P. Henderson writes, this paleontologist and Jesuit priest made it his personal mission to reconstruct the most basic Christian doctrines from the perspectives of science. He would do this by overthrowing all the barriers that had been erected between science and religion. He would take the lessons learned from the study of nature as the foundation on which to reconstruct the Christian faith. After the similar examples of Swedenborg, Phineas Quimby, and Mary Baker Eddy, Teilhard sought to deny the reality of sin and openly rejected the biblical gospel. In 1947, Teilhard said, very definitely there was no Adam and no Eve and no original sin. He wrote that original sin continually obstructs the natural expansion of our religion. It is a straitjacket that checks any movement of heart or head. It binds us hand and foot and drains the blood from us because it represents a survival of static concepts that are an anachronism in our evolutionist system of thought. A Catholic newsletter says that in the theology of Teilhard, we are all becoming Christ. There is no original sin and therefore no need of redemption. Evolutionary forces are ferrying everyone along to godhood, and all are anonymous Christians making faith in the literal death and resurrection of Christ unnecessary. The American Atheist magazine understands the situation too well. It writes, destroy Adam and Eve and original sin, and in the rubble you will find the sorry remains of the Son of God, and take away the meaning of his death. But did Teilhard intend to undermine the Christ of the Bible? Some have thought so, since Teilhard's evolutionary teachings parallel Eastern mysticism and pagan theology.
The whole Eastern pagan theological worldview is to undermine the deity of Christ and to elevate the deity of humanity. So Eastern mysticism, paganism, is talking about the God within. The way they Christianize it is by saying Christ is within me. I am the Christ, or the Antichrist that's going to come is the Christ, or the Lord, the Maitreya. So all of it is actually lessening the work of Christ, and man is elevated to a Christ-like person. And you'll find that in most of the cults, they will not give, Christ is not given the position of deity.
Another researcher writes that Roman Catholic scholar Pierre Teilhard du Chardin taught that the God to be worshipped is the one who will arise out of the evolving human race. Surely man's desire echoes Lucifer's proud boast. The book of Isaiah says of him, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High."
I will, I will, I will. You know, this guy's an egomaniac. Self-deceived egomaniac. I think he really thinks he's going to win the battle with God. Anyway, he said, I will be like the Most High. I mean, you got to be really deluded even to say that. That's the impossible dream. How many Most Highs can there be? I mean, you can't have. That's why God is called the Most High God. Okay? Now, there are a lot of other pretender gods. But he says to them, Jeremiah 10, verses 10 and 11, I'm the true God that created this universe. You say to the gods who have not made this heaven and earth, they will perish from under this heaven and from this earth. So, in that one ambition, I will be like the Most High, Lucifer did away with monotheism, one true God. He introduced polytheism. There would be many gods. Well, I'll be one of them. In fact, he's going to be the supreme one.
Lucifer's desire to be like the Most High God has compelled him to counterfeit the things of God. It is for this reason that so many similarities exist between the pagan religions of the world and Christianity. The Virgin Mother Goddess cult is perhaps the greatest example of this. Bible scholars believe that God's promise in the Garden of Eden concerning the seed of the woman, as opposed to the seed of the man, is the earliest reference to the virgin birth. It is for this reason that we find so many counterfeit virgin mothers in the pagan religions, mothers that look very similar to the paintings of the Virgin Mary, holding their sons who are often called deliverers. In paganism, one of the titles given to the Mother Goddess figures is the Queen of Heaven, a title that Rome has also given to the Catholic Virgin Mary. But in the Bible, Mary was never called a queen, and nobody ever prayed to her. In fact, in the book of Jeremiah, God specifically condemns prayers and offerings to the so-called Queen of Heaven. This confusion has caused some New Agers to suggest that Christianity is based upon pagan doctrines. New Age writer David Icke writes that Jesus was born to a virgin, but so was Christian.
Want to understand what's going on in space today and what's happening with the plan to put weapons in space, I think it's instructive to go back and understand the origins of the U.S. space program. And to do that, you have to go back to Nazi Germany. Hitler recruited a brilliant young rocket scientist by the name of Werner von Braun, who had a weekend rocket club, to come to work for the Nazis to build the V-1 and V-2 rockets that were used to terrorize the cities of London and Paris and Brussels towards the end of World War II. And for von Braun and his team, they set up along the Baltic Sea a place called Documentry. It was a research and development center for the Nazi rocket operation. And to this place in Documentry, the Nazis brought thousands of Jews and French resistance fighters to serve as prisoners, essentially slaves, to build this production effort. Well, the British found out about it, went in and bombed the entire operation. And so the Nazis said, we've got to move to a more secure location. And down inside of central Germany, there's a mountain chain called the Harz Mountains. And in that mountain, there's a huge tunnel where the Nazis were storing military hardware. Well, they cleared the whole thing out, moved the entire rocket operation into the tunnel, named it Mittelwerk. And just outside the mountain tunnel at Mittelwerk, the Nazis built a brand new concentration camp called Dora. And to Dora, the Nazis brought 40,000 Jews, gypsies, French resistance fighters,
homosexuals, communists, even a black American GI were brought there to serve as slaves for the operation. Well, you know, immediately after the war, the U.S. and the Allies created the Nuremberg trials, at which time we brought the Nazis to justice for their crimes against humanity. But 1,500 of the top Nazis never went to trial. They were smuggled into the United States by the U.S. military under a program called Operation Paperclip, smuggled in through Boston and West Palm Beach, Florida. And Wernher von Braun and his rocket team, 100 of them, along with 100 copies of the V-2 rocket, were sent to Huntsville, Alabama, where von Braun became the first director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. What's interesting is the other 1,400 Nazis. Who were they? Well, some of them were brought to the United States to work for the CIA. Others were brought to the United States to do the LSD drug experiments and the MK Ultra mind experiments during the 1960s, where people were jumping out of windows. Some of the Nazi scientists that in Germany had been taking Jews and putting them in freezing temperatures to see how the body would react to that were sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. They were put in charge of the U.S. military flight medicine program. And so when you take 1,500 of the top Nazi scientists and essentially seed the military-industrial complex, the question I have is, do they bring with them an ideological contamination? Well, not only did von Braun go to work for NASA, but the guy that was in charge of the V-2 flight test program up at Peenemünde along the Baltic Sea, a guy by the name of Kurt Debus, became the first director of the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And then the man that recruited von Braun, Major General Walter Dornberger, the guy that was sent by Hitler to recruit von Braun to come to work for the Nazis, he became vice president of Bell Aerosystems Corporation in New York that made its riches building the helicopters for the war in Vietnam. In fact, in 1958, Dornberger testified before the United States Congress saying that America's top space priority should be to, quote, conquer, occupy, keep, and utilize space between the Earth and the Moon. And in fact, later on in a speech before a national missile industry conference, Dornberger told the assembled, "Gentlemen, I didn't come to this country to lose the Third World War. I lost two already." And then finally, the man that was in charge of production at middleware inside the mountain tunnel there in Germany, Arthur Rudolph, he became the first project director of the NASA Saturn V rocket program that took the United States to the moon. And so these are the essential origins of the U.S. space program. And the Space Command put out a planning document a few years ago called Vision for 2020. And on the cover of it, you see a satellite hitting targets on the Earth below. Let's take a look at some of the language in this so-called Vision for 2020. The Space Command says that in the future, because of corporate globalization of the world economy, they expect that there's going to be a widening gap between the haves and the have-nots, between the rich and the poor all over the world. And as a result of that, the Pentagon predicts that there's going to be more and more regional instability around the world because people that are under the boot of these multinational corporations are going to organize. They're going to try to organize unions. They're going to organize to get these corporations from controlling their governments. And the Pentagon says, you know, we can't put a Marine on every single street corner of the world to suppress these populations. But with space technology in place, we'll be able to see everything, hear everything, and essentially target everything in every place on the Earth. And the Vision 2020 says that space superiority will emerge as an essential element of battlefield success in future warfare.
Father of the sect of the Pope. All right. As you know, the Pope is part of the One World Order government, you know, and the Pope's dove of peace attacked by seagull of iron. Alright. This is a message. Alright. A seagull attacking a dove. Alright. You don't see this stuff. Seagulls don't eat other birds while they're still alive. I can't say I don't see seagulls eat chicken and stuff, so. But I mean, seagulls don't attack other birds, like that. And definitely, this is the first time ever this happened. So this is a sign. We're about to read a little bit into this.
The release of a white dove is a traditional symbol of peace and tranquility. Like the olive branch and more recently the peace symbol, the white dove is recognized worldwide as an icon of hope, love, and friendship. That is, until it almost gets eaten by a seagull. On the final Sunday of January, 2,000 young people from Rome marched to the Vatican for the annual Caravan of Peace. These youngsters, members of Youth Catholic Action, went to hear the Pope speak and watch him release 2 white doves following the Angelus prayer. Accompanied by 2 children, Pope Benedict stood before the crowds and released the first dove into St. Peter's Square. Slightly disoriented, the bird eventually succeeded in flying up to a ledge above the pontiff's window.
That's just crazy.
The second bird was not so lucky. Soon after it had landed on a ledge window, it was attacked by a seagull who happened to be taking an afternoon flight through the famous plaza. Fortunately, the dove, maybe owing to some sort of divine intervention, was able to fight off the much larger seagull and fly away. Perhaps it could be time for the Vatican to reconsider the release of these birds, given last year's incident when both doves turned and flew straight back in through the window. They want to stay in the Pope's home, Pope Benedict said at the time, according to the Daily Mail.
Alright, you can read the rest of the Bible. Now that's strange too. Alright, remember Moses? He had 1 staff. And the priests had 2 staffs of magic and threw 2 snakes down. Alright? And that one righteous one came and devoured the other 2. And this thing, the other bird fought off the seagull. That's a symbol, it's the same thing. Alright? The seagull was a divine interaction by the Heavenly Father sending a message to the Pope that the world of peace is over. Alright, the bird of seagull, by the link at the bottom, stands for freedom and careless attitude. That's what kind of world we're living in nowadays. There's no more peace. People have careless attitudes. Alright, there's no more peace in the world. Alright, and there's not going to be no more peace for a while, folks. So I want everyone out there to be ready and be prepared. And that's actually unusual too. Both doves turned back and flew back into the Pope's house. Alright. There's a lot of strange stuff going on, symbols. So, I just want you people to be prepared. We're living in those times. World War III, rumors of wars. We're on the brink. That's why the seagull did that on the first Saturday. North Koreans eating their own people, like Nostradamus said. People become man-eaters. They're preparing around the world for a zombie apocalypse, either from drugs, from mutant viruses, or from people just starving from the great drought, famine, earthquakes in diverse places, superstorms, and we're about to see comets and asteroids and solar flares this year as we enter 2030.
In a possible sign from above, lightning has struck the Vatican just hours after Pope Benedict XVI announced his surprising resignation. Footage shot shows the top of St. Peter's Basilica being struck by lightning during a thunderstorm over the Vatican. The resignation has caused a stir around the world, and now it seems that nature itself has something to say about it. Pope Benedict XVI is the first pope to resign in over 700 years. He said the reason for the resignation is that he no longer had the mental or physical strength to do the job. Now the world is left waiting and wondering who his successor will be. Sally Turner for IB Times.
Before we get to the last Pope, alright, we're going to get to Pope John Paul II, that brought the new change to the Catholic Church. Alright, he is John Paul II. The first John Paul I was in office for 33 days. He died, and John Paul II got elected. So John Paul I died because of a secret society that was trying to take over the church. But the truth of the matter is that the church was always the false prophet, all the way back into the Middle Ages when it started up. Alright, John Paul II, his real name is Karol Joseph Wojtyła. He's from Poland. His ancestor is German. And the new pope is going to look just like him. It's kind of strange. Alright. Another thing that is important is the Second Vatican Council. What is the Second Vatican Council?
In October 1962, Wojtyła took part in the Second Vatican Council from 1962 to 1965, the New World Religion, where he made contributions to two of its most historic and influential products, the Decree on Religious Freedom and the Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the Modern World. Wojtyła and the Polish bishops contributed a draft text to the Council for Gaudium et Spes. According to the historian John W. O'Malley, the draft text Gaudium et Spes, which Wojtyła and the Polish delegation sent, had some influence on the version that was sent to the Council Fathers that summer, but was not accepted as the base text. According to John F. Crosby, as Pope John Paul II used the words of Gaudium et Spes later to introduce his own views on the nature of the human person in relation to God. Man is the only creature on earth that God has wanted for its own sake, but man can fully discover his true self only in a sincere giving of himself.
And when you read this article, it's talking about how man is the next God. And they're trying to create a one world religion. And he brought it up the first. It's called Vatican. You seen the video? Let's move up. All the religions in this world nowadays is created by the Vatican. So certain, like Jewish, but a lot of the Jewish doctrines have been changed too since the Catholicism been in place. Alright. He succeeded John Paul I. Like I said, that only survived 33 days in office. 33 is a degree in the Masonic order. They said that the first John Paul I died because of something, a secret within the Catholic Church. Doesn't matter. There's always been a secret society in the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church itself is a secret society. It's always been the false prophet that sat on the seven mountains. Alright? But this is what his main goal was that we're about to see. Alright?
His wish was to place his church at the heart of a new religious alliance that would bring together Jews, Muslims, and Christians in a great religious armada. On December 19, 2009, John Paul II was proclaimed venerable by his successor, Pope Benedict, and was beatified on May 1, 2011.
And when did the Bavarian Illuminati start? May 1st, 1776. Now, before we move on, I want to show you his signature, his face. You can see his face. The next pope is going to be just like John Paul II. He may claim his name to be John Paul III. Alright? Let's go down. His signature is very important. You see the two P's? Alright? And the second. PPP. Alright? When the last anti-faith person comes in charge, the last pope, he's gonna be musical. Alright? He's gonna be a walking instrument. I'm gonna show you. Alright? But the P's are notes. It's upper note. Alright? It's gonna be 6 and 3 scores. Alright, very important. Do some research. Look it up. Alright, I can't tell you the whole thing here on this show. It's very important, folks. Let's move on to Pope Benedict XVI. So we know Pope Benedict XVI just resigned on Thursday, February the 28th, 2013. It is a very important date. The day before he resigned is Wednesday, the day of Mercury. That's why Mercury is going out of orbit. It's a sign from the Heavenly Father. Another sign of the Heavenly Father is tomorrow, March the 1st, 2013. If you guys are seeing this in the future, March 1st, 2013 is a day since Venus is going out of control. Alright? It represents the dexter and the sinister of the coat of arms. Remember that. Today is Thursday, well, the 28th, the day Pope Benedict the 16th resigned. Alright? It's the day of Jupiter. Alright, folks, it's very important. Alright? He's in the middle of the dexter side of his sign. His main sign is on the dexter side. Alright? His armor. Excuse me, I mean his coat of arms, his crest. It's on the dexter side. Tomorrow, the future Pope is going to be on the sinister side. Very important. Pope Benedict XVI also was very close and also got taught by John Paul II. And he resided over his funeral and beautified him on the day May the 1st, 2011. Now this is very important where he was born. Alright? He was born in Marquette, Bavaria, Germany. The Bavarian Illuminati. Alright? See how it's going down? And
he had an influence second to none when it came to setting church priorities and directions as one of Pope John Paul II's closest confidants.
Alright. And as we move down, he did a lot of stuff for the church. You see the PP. This is coat of arms, human. This side, the coat of arms is known as the dexter. On this side, known as the sinister. He resigned on February 28, 2011 when Venus is shining super bright, and I got warnings and watches for Friday, March the 1st. But the day before, when his last day was Wednesday, Thursday, that's the dexter side. Alright, dexter and sinister also means two planets in astronomy going out of order. Kind of weird, right? Now let's move on. Here is the final Pope. Before we get into the last Pope, Pope Benedict is going to be known as a retired Pope, but he's still going to be known as Pope Benedict XVI.
Benedict XVI will be dubbed Pope Emeritus to reflect his former position. However, he will still be referred to as His Holiness, a common term used for the Pope. On the issue of names and titles, Benedict XVI will retain his papal name rather than reverting to usage of his birth name, Joseph Ratzinger.
And it's crazy, right? He's still going to be known as the Pope. So Pope Benedict will still be known as His Holiness Benedict XVI. He's going to be retired. And he went off. Alright? Now, the new Pope is different. But he knows Benedict XVI and they're part of the same group. Alright, Pope Benedict XVI is going off. No one's going to know what he's going to do. But he might be making rumors of war. He met with the 10 heads. Let me read a quote from Revelation, chapter 17, 9. Here is where the intelligence that has wisdom come in. The 7 heads mean 7 mountains. That's Rome, the 7 mountains, Italy, where the woman sits on top. And there are 7 kings. 5 have fallen. 5 popes before. One is, the other has not yet arrived. One is, that is Pope Benedict XVI, the other has not arrived. But when he does arrive, he must remain a short while. And the wild beast that was, but is not, Pope Benedict XVI, it is also itself an 8th king. He still refers to as Your Holiness, but he's retired. But springs from 7 He's the seventh. And it goes off into destruction. He went off. And the 10 horns that you saw mean 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they do receive authority as king 1 hour with the wild beast. He met with 10 heads of state, each for an hour. One of them was Obama. Obama's entering March 20th in Jerusalem. That's where John Paul II wants Islam, Christianity, and Jew to become one. Alright, folks, it's very important. Let's move on. And here is the final pope. Well, this is the last pope. Cardinal Chris Skornborn. Country, Austria.
Position, Archbishop of Vienna. Age 67. Likelihood, petty power puts him at 20-1. What his election would mean? A wish to return the church to the papacy of John Paul II.
That's very important.
Reasons he'll get elected: he was a persistent but not hysterical critic of the church's handling of the pedophilia crisis. Reasons he might not get elected: increasing doubts about his orthodoxy. He recently intervened in his diocese to reinstall an openly homosexual man to the parish council, humiliating one of his priests. It has been noticed in 2 words: ballooned mass.
And I will show you the video at the end. But look at him. Who does he look like? John Paul II, right? He wants to return the papacy back to John Paul II. That's when John Paul II was young. Alright, let's look at him one more time, then we're going to go into his dossier. Alright, folks. This is Christopher Shalom. Alright. This is very important because he was a former student of
Pope Benedict XVI, and a close confidant, ally, and longtime friend, who has been called Benedict's spiritual son. He has German, Bohemian, Czech, Austrian, and Irish ancestry. Has studied in France and been a professor for several years in Switzerland, and speaks 6 languages.
Bohemia. The Bohemian Grove. He's German. Alright, folks. Now, I showed you in the exorcism that sign, and we're going to see it again. Alright. Christoph Skortenborn is very important. Alright. What's Benedict's real name?
Joseph Ratzinger.
What's his middle name, though? Mystique? How do you pronounce that? Excuse me, folks.
Aloysius.
Aloysius. And he's still going to be in power as the second one comes. And his name is
Christoph, Maria, Michael, Hugo, Damien, Peter Adalbert, Graf von Skonborn.
Peter. The last pope, right, folks? Someone got to do with Peter. No one knows this except us right now. Alright, now this is very important. He's the Archbishop of Vienna. Let's go on. Where's the 2 tree on the night? You see black and gold right here. Very important colors. It's in Vienna. Remember this, folks? Vienna to present. Alright, let's get back to him. What is the color he's wearing? Black and gold, folks. Alright, very important. What else is he a part of? The Community of the Lamb. He's from the House of Skornborn, the Community of the Lamb, Australian Order of the Golden Fleece. Let's move on. So, Cardinal Christoph Skornborn, his full name is
Christoph, Maria, Michael, Hugo, Damien, Peter Adalbert, Graf von Skonborn.
Graf von means from Skornborn. Alright, but what's weird is that this guy has a woman's middle name. What do you think about that?
Well, I have seen men bearing a woman's, embarrassingly enough, name, but perhaps it's the woman that seats the throne. His name covers all aspects of sexuality, basically, and history as well. So, I don't know.
Alright, let's get into what his name means.
He's a bearer of many names.
His whole name, so Christoph, also known as Christopher. There ain't no ER. I don't know what that means, but this is what it means.
In the original Greek, the name Christophoros means Christ bearer. It comes from Christos, Christ, or anointed one, and pherin, which is to bear. It meant that believers carried Christ in their hearts and minds. However, many early Christians took the name literally, and a legend grew up that a certain Saint Christopher had carried the young Jesus over a stream on his back.
Alright, so it means bear, Christ bear. The name Maria is Latin for Mary.
The most popular of Spanish names, Maria is the Latinate form of Mary, which is from the Hebrew Miriam, a name of debated meaning. Many believe it to mean sea of bitterness or sea of sorrow. However, some sources cite the alternative definitions of rebellion, wished for a child, and mistress or lady of the sea. The name bestowed in honor of the Virgin Mother of Christ. Because Maria is so popular, it is often bestowed in the form of a combination name to distinguish among individuals. It is not uncommon to have several Marias in the same family.
And what does Michael mean? Who is like God. Alright. What does Hugo mean?
Taken from the Old High German and Teutonic languages, the male given name Hugo carried the meaning of bright in mind and spirit. When derived from the Anglo-Saxon language, it means mind, heart, and famous bright.
Alright, let's move on. What does Damien mean?
The Damien, the thing that caused people to believe that Damien does in fact mean the son of the devil, was an urban legend. Damien in this sense means devil child, and it is believed to have stemmed from the word demon. Daemon. Daemon is an older word that is in fact still used, that is used to mean either devil or demon. The suffix "ion" at the end of Damien means that the thing with the name relates to dam or daemon. It's word a name that has been cleverly created, but it does not mean that the name Damien really does mean son of the devil. It just cleverly fits the urban legend definition and meaning.
And what's crazy is that this is what it really means. D-A-E, Damon. Is
Damon, which is an older way of saying demon.
Yep. What does Peter mean? Peter means the rock. And what does Albert mean? Intelligent or noble. Grafon means from, and Schoenborn means from that place. That's actually his family last name was Schoenborn is actually a place. So his name is to bear, sea of bitterness or sea of sour, rebellion, who is like God. To bear, rebellion, who is like God, bright in mind and spirit, demon, the rock, intelligent or noble. That is a serious name, folks. I mean, that's not even a random name. That guy has a long name.
Yeah, it's full of meaning, that's for sure.
Alright, now this is very important. So, we see that he's part of the Lamb. What do you think about Masonic, Mozart, Catholicism, and Freemasonry?
According to Eric Littenberger, Schönborn's spokesman, the cardinal's position is that Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was a Freemason, but that he was also fully Catholic.
So he believes it doesn't matter if you're part of secret society, if you're fully Catholic. It's both the same thing. It doesn't matter anyways. Let's move up. Now let's see his coats of arms. And we're gonna pause here for a second. You can see his birthplace and
his birthplace and ancestral castle, Skalka Castle, in modern Vleshila.
He comes from a family of power, from royalty. Alright? A lot of royalty. You got from Bohemian, like the Bohemian Club, alright? Count Hugo Damien von Scortenborgs. He comes from a lot of
a long lineage of titles and power.
Yes. Now this is his coat of arms. He's a lion. On the sinister part, that's on this part, the left side, he's a lion. It's on your right side, but when you're facing with it, it's on your left side. And Pope Benedict's is on the left and right, but Dexter is on the right since he's the Dexter. Alright, folks. And also, he was a student of Pope Benedict's. And Pope Benedict's referred to him as what? Let's read that one more time, folks.
A close confidant, Pope Benedict XVI, close confidant, ally, and longtime friend, who has been called Benedict's spiritual son. He has German, Bohemian, Czech, Austrian, and Irish ancestry, has studied in France, and has been a professor for several years in Switzerland. Speaks 6 languages.
That's a lot of languages, too.
Yeah, it is.
And that's a lion. And he is the head of the community of the Lamb. It's very important. The community of the Lamb.
The Community of the Lamb is the name of a young Roman Catholic religious institute. It consists of 2 branches, the Little Sisters of the Lamb and the Little Brothers of the Lamb. They are a branch of the Dominican Order. Since 1996, Cardinal Christoph Schönborn, OP, Archbishop of Vienna, Austria, has been the bishop responsible for the community.
Lion and a lamb. And that's sinister. Remember all these crosses. We're just going to stare and be quiet because we are about to show you what the meaning of exorcism part 2 meant, since a lot of movies and music is very important when they show this on the wall. You see, Obama is one of the 10 kings, well, one of the head of the 10 kingdoms, and they're making him look like the Antichrist. It wouldn't be that easy to find out who's the Antichrist. It wouldn't. What do you think, Misty?
No, I just don't think it's an obviously discernible thing. The Antichrist or the satanic spirit operates a mystery of iniquity on this earth, and iniquitous beings are in the quiet. They are not something that's going to be obvious. They're going to point fingers and you in a direction of other places, put you on a parallel path of the truth. But iniquity is just that, dark, murky, mysterious.
Remember the letters, folks. A, M, O, A. Remember this. We're about to show you the video. I'll be quiet for a second. This is the No Face Moon. Please rate, subscribe, comment. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Blogspot, Critterbox, Godlike Production. And this is Mystique.
You can come and subscribe to me. I'm on Facebook. I'm under Mystique, MYST3QUE. I have a channel also located on YouTube. And we're the No Face Movement.
And if you would like to donate, the links are going to be at the bottom. This is, you guys will help us move the movement more as we get into deeper research, bring you up-to-date facts and up-to-date weather advisory.
If you're interested in joining the movement, hit our Facebook pages. We can move about a little bit more freely there at our websites. Look up Mystique or the No Face Movement on Facebook, inbox us so we can have privacy or whatever. And if you'd like to contribute to any of these articles or research, you are welcome to do so. Seriously, you are welcome to do so.
Let's look at this one more time. This is the curtain opening up. Crosses, triangles. Remember the crosses, the lion, king of lions, and he's a member of the community of the lamb, little lambs.
It's a strange hat there at the top as well. That appears to be a woman's hat. It seems rather feminine, and it also looks like it's depicted a shape of a red saucer with something rope-like and also electrode looking coming out. So, yeah, a beam. It can be interpreted different ways.
It makes us despair to see ourselves as animal nothing, to reject the possibility that God could love us.
The original story of Lucifer is this. Lucifer indeed was an angel at one point. He decided he wanted to praise himself, and with that, God cast him out of heaven. He took a third of the world. Then that basically is the center of the entire world. The soul of a man.
Just as there is a hierarchy of angels, there are more people behind them all. Heaven and earth, the world behind them. Now, the interesting thing about skeptics is that they're always the question is, God likes to watch. He's a sadist! I'm here on the ground with my nose in it since the whole thing began. After the fall comes the rise. And his great plan.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Neil Sanders about music. Now, Neil, you want to talk about COINTELPRO. Just to explain what that term means.
COINTELPRO it's an FBI project. It was J. Edgar Hoover. Essentially what it is, it's counterintelligence. It's to infiltrate and to cause dissent with false news stories or rumours or whatever. And it was aimed at political activists, it was aimed at musical activists, it was aimed at the Black Panthers, and it was a project by which to discredit any anti-government movements. And obviously in the 60s we've got this new righteous movement, we've got the folk movement, and then going into the flower power movement and whatnot. And this is a declassified document talking about it. It says, when dealing with these people, show them as scurrilous and depraved, call attention to their habits and living conditions, explore every possible embarrassment, send in women and sex, break up marriages, have members arrested on marijuana charges, investigate personal conflicts or animosities between them, send articles to the newspapers showing their depravity, use narcotics and free sex to entrap, use misinformation to confuse and disrupt, get records of their bank accounts, obtain specimens of handwriting, and provoke target groups into rivalries that may result in death. And if anybody wants to sort of have a look at the way that they split up the Black Panthers and got different factions of them essentially fighting with each other by lying. And this is shown in music. One of the most famous ones recently was the East Coast, West Coast hip-hop battles, where you've got the New York side of America and the West Coast of California side set up to hate each other, to absolutely hate each other over really nothing. But this is the point. The point is that music can utilise entire swathes of people. If they're willing to break the law and use prostitution, drugs and murder to stop musicians, then somebody's paying attention to it.
All right, so how is music today influencing young people? What is it making them do and not do?
Well, I mean, aside from the fact that music, I mean, it's incredibly powerful. Music will affect the way you dress. It'll affect who your friends are, especially at school, because, you know, your trendy guys aren't going to hang around with your rocker guys or whatever. It could even affect the person that you end up marrying or going out with, because you've probably met them at a club that listens to that particular music. You could even go so far as to say different genres of music have got different attributes that are considered desirable. If you look at the figures of women in hip-hop videos to the figures of women in metal videos or whatever, there's a difference. So genre can define what is considered the norm. Now, I know we've spoken before about sort of sexualisation of children and stuff like that, and I'm a bit wary about this because I don't want to come across as a prude, because frankly, I don't care. But when you've got people like Britney Spears dressing up as a schoolgirl, but with her underwear hanging out or whatever, that, you know, we're going down a strange route there. You've got Christina Aguilera saying in her song Genie in a Bottle, that song's about a girl deciding whether or not to give up her virginity. And she does this, basically, you'll be able to do that if you rub her the right way. That's fine. Personally, I've sent lots of emails off to her offering that very service. So far, she's not got back in touch with me. But the point is, her key audience is 6-year-old girls. So when you've got 6-year-old girls blindly singing this back, that's perhaps a problem, especially considering these are supposed to be role models. We're looking at, say, Lady Gaga and stuff like that. What the message of Lady Gaga, essentially the positive female role model, is the highest attribute you can have is your sexuality. That's what they're teaching people. Right. Let's have a look at some lyrics, okay? Destiny's Child, Beyonce. Christian R&B group, in their song Soldier, so what parent could possibly object to that? No one. In their song Soldier, that this is the ideal man for Destiny's Child, and then by inference their fans. I need a soldier that ain't scared to stand up for me, normally carry big things, if you know what I mean. Now, for anybody that's not down with the kids, what that means, carrying big things, is a loaded gun. So Destiny's Child, a positive role model Christian R&B group, have said that the perfect man for them carries a gun.
Right. So let's just say that is not her writing that lyric, and it's an orchestration from...
It probably is. I doubt that any of them... When you say, oh, Lady Gaga says she writes her own songs, she may have come up with a chord progression, but she's not writing her own songs. You look at her thing, it's her and then 17 other high-paid producers. And this is what we're saying about it. It's not rubbish, it's very, very clever.
So the likes of the Tavistock Institute and maybe the CIA, who you think are maybe manipulating music...
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what would be the intention of sexualising children at a young age and making them say those lyrics?
It's just a disintegration of the family state, isn't it? It's just like, you know, it makes...
So you think there's an agenda...
It's fine. It's
to stop people living in normal family units? Do you think that there's an actual agenda to do that?
I think when people are concerned with sex and conspicuous consumption, again, they're not really being politics. They're not going to be paying attention to things. And we've got this thing at the minute...
To divert them.
Well, yeah, but it's not just the diversion, it's the raising up of these things, like a fancy car, a beautiful girlfriend, a lot of exotic sex. It's raising these things up to be the only things that people desire.
I mean, it could be something as simple as young people are going to listen to music.
Of course they are.
Right? They do. That's what people do. So music can be massively influential in informing someone. So they say, well, they're going to listen to it.
We
so
might as well
we might as well have them going down that way, so they're not going to end up being revolutionaries or critical thinkers.
And one example of what happens when you don't play to the thing is what happened to Jimi Hendrix. Now, what a lot of people possibly don't realise is that Jimi Hendrix, his manager was a bloke called Michael Jeffrey. He was an MI6 agent, and he admitted on many occasions to killing Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
What they did was he didn't drown in vomit, he drowned in wine. Right. Because he sacked Michael Jeffrey and was showing his support to the Black Panthers. Originally, Jimi Hendrix, strangely, was actually pro-Vietnam War because he came from a military father background and whatnot. It was when he came to England and was speaking to all the other bands and stuff, he realised that actually, now this isn't cool. He sacked off Michael Jeffrey and began to do fundraisers for the Black Panthers, and then he was killed. Now, a lot of people say, oh, come on. The bloke that did the autopsy on Jimi Hendrix said this is very strange because his lungs and his stomach are full of wine, and his throat's bruised, his hair's soaked with wine, and his clothes are soaked with wine, but there's no alcohol in his bloodstream.
Right.
It's almost as if someone's held him down and drowned him in it.
All right. Now, I mean, you could prove your point by saying, in today's modern popular culture music, where is the role model, true role model, someone who is thinks critically, who is political, someone who is moral, and all the rest of it, someone that the young people would look up to. Where is that person?
Yeah, and the best expression of this is the way that gangster rap was utilised. Now, if anyone wants a sort of big background of this, you either go and buy the book by John Potash, which is called The FBI and the Assassination of Black Leaders, or listen to stuff that Professor Griff of Public Enemies actually spoke about on the internet. Excellent stuff. The point about gangster rap and Death Row Records, which is the main record company that promoted Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre and Corrupt and Daz and all these people who were the sort of these are our rap stars.
Are these modern pop groups?
Yes, these are the people involved in the pop music. Yeah. What it did was it changed the concept. Prior to that, we had positive role models in rap. We had Public Enemy, we had DJ Kool Herc, we had African Bambaataa, and we had things like this. And they were basically talking about political equality, what is now called positive rap. What happened with the inception of Death Row, and it was utilised through Vibe magazine. Vibe magazine is one of the, it coined the phrase gangster rap. When you start to look at this, you realise that the popularisation of this gangster image was intrinsically linked to the CIA. Vibe magazine, which was run by Quincy Jones, was financed by the CIA. It was the principal organisation that promoted Death Row Records and gangster rap. Death Row Records itself, and I've got to say, I'm a big fan of this music, so I'm not trying to criticise the music. Death Row Records, the CEO of Death Row Records was a bloke called Harry O. Harry O was one of the main cocaine importers in the United States. He dealt directly with the Medellin. He also had suspicious connections to the CIA because the whole thing was connected, as is shown in Gary Webb's fine book, Dark Alliance, to the Iran-Iraq-Contra. What was happening was that the CIA were bringing cocaine into America. They discovered how to make crack, and they were using it to kill black people in the ghetto. Through the expansion of gangster rap came this new image of young black men. This new image of young black men as gangsters that sold crack in the ghetto. This made it a desirable thing. It neutralised Public Enemy. It neutralised all these other positive rap acts because basically we've got this far more exciting thing. They're killing each other. They've got guns and drugs and girls hanging off them and stuff like that. So it progresses this image, this stereotype of young black men as gangsters. And this is the image that is now portrayed from them. So if you think about rap, you wouldn't think of positive, you'd think of negative.
So what you're saying is that maybe in the early days it was considered, hey, this could be a bit threatening. This is something we want to manage negatively. We're going to put so you're saying that the association of guns with rap, association of drugs with rap, that was an orchestrated move by the CIA.
Yeah, and it's all connected. You won't notice it's at the same time that the film Scarface is coming out, which presents the people with Al Pacino. Now, what's interesting is this film was slated all across the board, and yet it became hugely popular because what it did is provided people with a not white hero. Okay, he's not black, but he's not white, so he could be seen as an anti-hero. And that concept of drug-dealing kingpin is then pushed in. This is also proved by a bloke called Freeway Ricky Ross. Freeway Ricky Ross has not long come out of prison. He was another major player in getting crack into the ghetto. He dealt directly with the CIA. So we've got two major drug kingpins that just happen to be connected intrinsically with crack and the introduction of this new type of rap music. We've got people like David Kenner, who's the lawyer for Death Row, who is basically also functioning as a lawyer for several mafia families. And we've got this hype coming from Vibe magazine and various other things which show intrinsic financial connections to the CIA, hyping up this concept that this is the new genre. This is the way that you are to think about young black men now. They are gangsters.
Now, I just want to ask you about Michael Jackson, Neil, because I've heard it said that he was considering in his world tour that he was about to embark on before he died, that he was possibly going to start mentioning 9/11 truth.
Very possibly.
Have you heard that?
I've not heard that. I've heard that I've heard some of the speeches he's talking about how Sony's evil. And I've heard the stuff that what I found very interesting was the second that he died, Sony took control of the Beatles' back catalogue, which is one of the main assets. That within 2 weeks of Michael Jackson dying, we had a new Paul McCartney greatest hits and we had a new John Lennon greatest hits.
Right.
I'm assuming that they've seized back their assets because Michael Jackson owned the Beatles' back catalogue.
Yeah. I mean, if you can just imagine Michael Jackson launch, because he hadn't been on tour for some years, and he's still a huge icon.
Yeah.
You know, and he is was a class act. No one can deny this guy's talent as a dancer, songwriter, and singer. If he just stopped his song halfway through and said, "Right, chaps, 9/11 inside job," imagine how much influence he would have. And do you think that could...
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was always talked about was the fact that Lennon was talking about going into politics, and not in a major way, but that's the suggestion as to why John Lennon was killed as well, because he's somebody that can channel dissent in a intelligent and eloquent way.
And as you say, there are, if you go on YouTube, there are speeches of Michael Jackson recorded on people's phones and stuff of him speaking very negatively about
Tommy Mottola. At one point, he basically makes a suggestion that Tommy Mottola, who was at the time the head of Sony Records and married to Mariah Carey, he makes a suggestion that Tommy Mottola is Mariah Carey's handler.
Right.
So, you know, who knows.
Das ist mein Leib, der für euch hingegeben wird.